chat, it's time. We reacting to conspiracy theories that turned out to be true. No bat.
Missing Japanese citizens. One night in June 1978, a 22-year-old single mother of two kids named Yaiko Taguchi was working her usual...
Yaito Taguchi? That's the type of names they giving out in Japan? That's some different shit right there. I never heard no shit like that. Taguchi.
78, a 22-year-old single mother of two kids named Yaiko Taguchi was working her usual shift in Tokyo.
It's in Japan, right? I don't want to be racist.
Missing Japanese citizens. One night in June 1978, a 22-year-old single mother of two kids named Yaiko Taguchi was working her usual shift in Tokyo, Japan's Cabaret Hollywood. After finishing her shift right at around midnight, Yaiko left the cabaret through the front door and was never seen again.
You take your eyes off in 1 second, you're going to get confused.
Had happened to Yaiko.
Miss out on details.
In fact, several years later, her manager was questioned, and he claims that everyone thought she had quit when she failed to show.
See, I'm not focused.
At first, nobody thought that anything serious had happened to Yaiko. In fact,
so she's missing.
At first, nobody thought that anything serious had happened to Yaiko. In fact, several years later, her manager was questioned, and he claims that everyone thought she had quit when she failed to show up.
Wow.
At around that time, there had been rumors going around that several North Korean spies were working undercover in Japan looking to abduct innocent citizens and hold them as hostages back in North Korea.
What?
However, this was seen by the Japanese government as nothing more than a conspiracy theory that couldn't possibly be true.
That sounds like a movie.
Sadly, the missing case of Yaiko went cold, and it wasn't until almost a decade later that a clue to her whereabouts emerged.
10 years? A decade? That'd be the most sad shit. Where like something happened and they can't figure it out until like 10 years later when your mind off it and then it triggers you again. Like, that's fucked.
Following a disturbing chain of events. In November 1987, as South Korea was preparing to host the Olympics in the capital city of Seoul, a Korean Airlines plane blew up in mid-air as it was flying over the Andaman Sea, taking the lives of 115 innocent people. During the investigation, it was revealed that two North Korean agents acting under direct orders from the North Korean government had planted a bomb in an overhead storage compartment before getting off at the first layover in...
Them niggas nading out and shit? C4 in the plane? That's crazy, bro. UAV and some more shit.
Abu Dhabi. As the authorities were closing in on the two suspects, one of them took his life with a cyanide-laced cigarette, but the South Korean government was able to arrest the...
Oh, so it was like his mouth was fizzing. His mouth fizzing and he smoking a cigarette and shit. That's crazy. Think of some shit like that. You poison the cig, or you lace it, whatever you want to say.
The other agent responsible for the attack. During her interrogation, it was revealed that she had been training...
Damn, so North Korea in Japan be beefing like that? I didn't even know that.
...for that mission for 6 years. And that for 3 of them, she had been paired with Yaiko Taguchi, who had taught her how to speak and act like a Japanese woman so she could fly under the radar.
Wait.
As it was later revealed, Yaiko wasn't the only woman who had been kidnapped by the North Korean government.
So she was kidnapped. And the feds was just sitting on the ad talking about that's just some conspiracy. It wasn't no North Korean spies that came over, swooped her, kidnapped her, and then made them work for her. Made her work for them. That's crazy, gang.
17 Japanese citizens have been officially confirmed by the Japanese government as having been abducted by North Korea from 1977 to 1983.
Wow.
Disturbingly, a lot of them were shamelessly kidnapped in the middle of the day and thrown on a boat to North Korea. You might think that the victims were involved in something shady that put them on the North Korean government's radar.
Nah, it was just
investigations actually suggest that most of them were average citizens who just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. One woman was captured while she was walking to...
I mean, shit, that's what they did to black niggas during slavery and shit. They just swooped them and took them. Real shit. Average black people.
A knitting class, and 2 others were kidnapped on a vacation to Europe. Another one, a 13-year-old girl, was taken as she was walking back home from school.
13.
Some of these victims were kidnapped for identity theft purposes, while others, like Yaiko, were forcefully brought to North Korea to teach the Japanese
never to go to a regular day of school again.
After the kidnappings
have a
were
regular
confirmed
day
beyond the shadow of a doubt,
school
the
again.
North Korean government had no choice but to come forward and apologize. But they claimed that only 5 of the 17 kidnapping victims were still alive.
Wow. Bitch, I don't want your apology. What y'all gonna do? Y'all gonna pay back the families that y'all kidnapped from? Y'all gonna give us part of your land or some shit? Like, a sorry? Fuck out of her. Fuck
Over
out
the
of
next
her.
few years, the North
Fuck
Korean
outta.
government would send what they would claim to be the cremated remains of some of the deceased victims back to Japan. However, as DNA testing would quickly reveal, pretty much all of the remains were fake, leading the Japanese government to believe that
Yo, these niggas is grimy. Yo, them North Korean niggas is grimy. Back in the day, I don't know if they grimy still now. Probably still is.
many more of the kidnapping victims were still alive. To this day, the North Korean government has stuck to its story, claiming that there are only 13 kidnapping victims and that the ones who are still alive were sent back safely to Japan.
Wow.
Shockingly, while the
niggas.
Japanese government has officially
cap.
confirmed 17 kidnappings, the list of potential victims suggests that the true number could be as high as 800. Sadly, given the current political situation, it's unlikely we'll ever see the full extent of these abductions, or see the North Korean government held truly accountable for its
they keeping that shit in the tuck. That's never coming. That's never seen the light of day. That information.
horrific crimes.
They keeping that in the tuck.
Just the other day, I found myself wasting hours of time I could have spent working on videos trying to find and
Fuck out her.
too difficult description. Control of your
As in the big 2025. Nah, gang.
heart attack gun.
Heart attack.
Back in the
gun.
70s, a journalist named Seymour Hersh published an article in the New York
Seymour
Times
Hersh.
in which
That
he
sounds
accused the
familiar.
CIA of several assassination attempts on both foreign and American politicians who they considered to be anti-war dissidents.
Okay.
Due to these allegations, the U.S. Senate put the CIA under investigation for alleged covert action abuses, which resulted in the release of 14 reports on major abuses committed by the CIA, FBI, and NSA.
Right.
The majority of the reports included accusations of crimes such as opening and resealing U.S. citizens' private mail for several years and illegally surveilling Black Power activists. Although these claims are obviously pretty serious, they paled in comparison to one particular accusation, or conspiracy theory, which alleged that the CIA had developed a pistol that could fire a poison dart over 300 feet, take a person's life, and leave absolutely no trace as to the cause of death. As it was later revealed, this theory turned out to be true, and the development of the poison dart gun was just one part of the program called MK Naomi, through which the CIA had sought to develop weapons for biological warfare.
Oh, that nigga, he got the piece on him. What the fuck?
In 1975, William Colby, the CIA
bitch got a
director at
scope
the
on
time,
there
had
and
to
all.
testify in front of the committee that was investigating the agency.
They got
During
that fire.
questioning, he claimed that the CIA had developed a host of biological weapons as part of a plan to eliminate German leaders during World War II, but that their research had continued until well after the war.
Speaking of World War II and Germans, y'all fuck with that new yay, that new that his new song. I you know what I'm saying? I heard like maybe like 15 seconds. Let me know if that shit fire. Let me know.
He also mentioned that the poison dart gun was almost completely silent on account of the battery that was housed inside the
Poison
handle,
dart
and
gun.
that it had been specifically designed for the target to feel nothing more than a mosquito bite when the dart struck.
Wow.
Interestingly, the agency had used a specific shellfish toxin to make it impossible for anyone to know what the cause of death was, leading
Wow.
forensic pathologists to believe that the victim had suffered an inexplicable heart attack. It wouldn't help pathologists that the dart was designed to melt inside the body so that it only left a small red mark where it entered the victim.
Wow.
When asked if the heart attack gun, as it was nicknamed, was ever used on anyone, the director alleged that it had only been used for experiments and that there were no records of actual use.
What do you mean experiments?
As part of
How you gonna experiment with that? You experiment on a nigga, the nigga gonna be dead. How you experimenting? Is it niggas willing to die? That's using letting they bodies be experimented on? Or some shit. Like, these are the answers we need. These are the questions that need to be answered. You feel me?
Investigation, the CIA
y'all
had
not
to
thinking,
hand
I'm
over the
thinking.
gun to the committee, and there are some pretty wild pictures of the committee members analyzing the gun
Motherfuckers
as William
slapped the
Colby
gun.
answers their questions about it. Normally, you'd expect to see something like the heart attack gun in a spy movie, and it's pretty wild to think
The
that if
heart
they hadn't
attack
put it
gun.
under
So
investigation,
that's a
they would have
fine
probably
name.
gotten
Gonna lie.
away with using it for who knows what purposes.
That's a fine name.
It's also pretty crazy to think that if that's the kind of stuff they were developing back in the 70s, imagine the kind of technology they have their hands on now. Disturbingly, the hearing was the only time the heart attack gun was ever shown publicly, and to this day, it remains unclear what happened to it after the investigation. Rogue waves. Sailors often get a reputation for making up stuff they claim to have seen during their time out at sea, and because there's no one there to refute their claims, they sometimes get away with some pretty tall tales. For centuries,
You're a lingo merchant. You know that? You need to stop stealing our black culture. You little Asian ass.
the sensor recorded an 84-foot tall wave, which served as the first real piece of evidence for the existence of rogue waves. After this incident, a lot of people started wondering how many of the sailors from previous centuries had been telling the truth. What's more disturbing than that is that there were
Never fucked a white girl in my life, man.
Probably hundreds of disappeared sailors from all around the world who had come across a rogue wave, also known as a monster wave or a freak wave. But because most people who encountered 100-foot tall rogue waves
Bitches don't even let you touch them, though. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Instead of you pushing bunny allegations and shit. Let's talk about how women don't let you touch them at all. Like they get disgusted and shit when you next to them. Your hot ass breath and shit. Your breath smell like shit, gang. Smell like dog piss and shit. I can take care of black queens for you. More for me. You wouldn't even know what to do with a black queen. Your little bony ass. Even though you don't even want to show what you look like. Alright, I got it in my head. You was a bony like Asian, like your knees touch to each other and shit. You got inward knees. You got teeth that touch the top of your lip, the bottom of your lip and shit, cause you got overbite and shit. You talk like you be giggling like retarded ass. Stay in your snow bunny lover lane. Why you keep projecting? If you like white, you know what I'm saying? There's nothing wrong with that, yeah? There's nothing wrong with white women. There's some fine white shit. Just stop. I don't know why you pushing that shit on me, though. I got the light skins. You don't got shit. You don't got shit. Sidetracking me and shit. Watching good vids, you sidetracking me with some bullshit. A little retarded.
Lived to tell the tale, their testimony went down into the depths of the ocean with them. Since the Dropner wave of 1995, there's been a growing interest in rogue waves brewing in the scientific community. A few years ago, a professor had been into figuring how many of the sailors from previous rogue in the North Theory witnessing the quickly even key that would first get rogue waves. Sailors often get a reputation for making up stuff they claim to have seen during their time out at sea, and because there's no one there to refute their claims, they sometimes get away with some pretty tall tales. For centuries, sailors all around the world had talked about seeing monster waves on the open sea that would allegedly reach over 100 feet in height. In 1826, a French captain claimed that he had seen a 108-foot tall wave in the Indian Ocean. Even though he had 3 sailors with him who backed up his claims, when he came back to the mainland, he was publicly ridiculed by the scientific community, as it was widely believed that it was impossible for a wave to be higher than...
They just not, you know what I'm saying? They don't be out in the ocean for real. They not real ocean navigators on some shit. If they never seen a wave that tall, they frauds.
30 feet tall. For a long while after that, dozens of people continued to claim sightings of these monstrous waves in the middle of the ocean. But with no real evidence other than eyewitness testimonies, the existence of these waves fell into the urban legend or conspiracy theory category. In the 80s and early 90s, the Draupner platform was set up in the North Sea off the coast of Norway to extract natural gas. Right. As part of the protocol that was carried out to see if the platform was stable enough to withstand the rough seas, a wave height recorder was installed on the platform. On New Year's Day in 1995, the sensor recorded an 84-foot tall wave, which served as the first real piece of evidence for the existence of rogue waves. After this incident, a lot of people started wondering
so that gotta be like a monster wave.
Previous centuries had been telling the truth,
or something like that.
What's more disturbing than that is that there were probably hundreds of disappeared sailors from all around the world who had come across a rogue wave, also known as a monster wave or a freak wave.
That's some Cthulhu ass shit. Your age, count your days, man. Cause what the fuck was that? That was some Cthulhu ass shit. I just called that shit a monster wave. This nigga behind, he just acted me say some monster wave. Hey, fuck out of here with that wave. I don't do that shit. No.
But because most people who encountered 100-foot tall rogue waves generally didn't live to tell the tale,
keep that shit over there.
Into the depths of the ocean with them. Since the Draupner wave of 1995,
there's been a great interest in
rogue waves brewing in the scientific community.
Hell
a few years ago, a professor at the Australian National University had estimated that
would y'all do them oiler jobs, them platforms out in the ocean and shit? That shit is crazy, man. That shit is crazy. All it takes is the oil to leak or some shit, and then a fire or some crazy shit. Like, imagine you on that platform and shit, and then a hurricane was on that bit, like on the ocean, and it's coming in your path. That's crazy. That's some scary ass shit.
At any given moment, there are 10 rogue waves active in the world's oceans.
Nah, I couldn't
do that. As of today, a rogue wave is usually defined as a wave that is twice as large as the largest waves that come up in a particular area.
No, sir.
And while the root cause of rogue waves continues to be investigated, it's generally accepted that these monster waves appear when 2 wave crests join together at the exact right time, resulting in a massive wave that can sink even the largest ships and oil rigs.
Hell nah.
Interestingly,
it could sink it could sink the shit? Fuck no.
Discovered that rogue waves can take place in large lakes.
No.
In 1975, a freighter named the SS Edmund Fitzgerald sank in Lake Superior under some pretty mysterious circumstances, with a lot of people in the scientific community coming up with all kinds of hypotheses to explain the incident. It wasn't until several years later that the scientists started theorizing that the vessel could have fallen prey to a set of 3 consecutive killer rogue waves.
Wow.
A phenomenon referred to as the 3 Sisters, in which the first wave destabilizes the ship, the second wave hits the ship's deck before it can stabilize again, and the third wave overloads the ship with more water than it can take on. If this were true, it could also provide an explanation for the mysterious sinking of contagion. It wasn't until several years later that the scientists started theorizing that the vessel could have fallen prey to a set of 3 consecutive killer rogue waves. A phenomenon referred to as the 3 Sisters, in which the first wave destabilizes the ship, the second wave hits the ship's deck before it can stabilize again, and the third wave overloads the ship with more water than it can take on. If this were true, it could also provide an explanation for the mysterious sinking of other large ships in oceans around the world over the past few centuries.
Titanic?
But this might be a bit more difficult to prove. Poisonous alcohol. In January 1920, the 18th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was successfully ratified, triggering a 13-year period known as Prohibition, during which the production, sale, and transportation of alcohol was made illegal. During this period, the government enforced some pretty strict measures to prevent bootlegging of alcohol, which made the alcohol black market flourish like crazy. It was pretty.
But that's when them cartel niggas and them Italians and shit was bringing in, you know what I'm saying, the Irish beers and shit like that. They was sneaking them shits in. Shit.
much a playground for the mafia, in which the government would raid one bar and another one would crop up in just a few days' time. While all this was happening, there were some pretty messed up rumors floating around that the U.S. government was taking extreme measures to make sure people weren't consuming alcohol. These included allegations that the government was intentionally poisoning alcohol to make people who consumed it sick. For a while, this remained something.
They started poisoning that bit just to get rid of that. You killing niggas just to get rid of it? That's crazy.
Something of a conspiracy theory, but things took a turn pretty quickly on
yeah, exactly. That's a perfect one. New Year's Eve and shit. You with some fine shit. You gotta get poisoned because you want to drink some liquor and that shit is banned and shit. That's crazy.
New Year's Day 1927, when 41 people died from alcohol poisoning at New York's Bellevue Hospital.
That's
disturbingly, the
that's
autopsies
crazy,
revealed that
man.
a lot of the victims had been drinking industrial methanol, otherwise known as wood alcohol, which can be fatal even at low doses.
Nah,
it turns
that ain't
out that
right,
the government
bro.
had forced companies to denature industrial alcohol
That ain't
to make
right,
it
man.
undrinkable since 1906,
That
which was
ain't
far
right.
before Prohibition. But when the crackdown on alcohol started, the government ordered these companies to add quinine, methyl alcohol, and other toxic chemicals to discourage
You
people
didn't need
from
all that,
drinking
bro.
it. Their reasoning was that if black market dealers knew their alcohol had been poisoned, they wouldn't dare distribute it knowing how dangerous it would be.
You think them niggas? You think they care about who they giving that to? They just care about making the bread and shit, getting them. You know what I'm saying? Bringing them blues in. They don't give a fuck how they affect other people and shit. Their customers and shit. It'll just be some new ones trying to get some lit. They don't give a fuck. Why couldn't y'all just make like the taste bad or something? I mean, alcohol okay, never mind. Alcohol tastes bad for the most part. What's a way to like without killing niggas, bro? It gotta be a way for like without you killing niggas.
Would be for their customers to consume. I
That's
guess they
crazy,
forgot to
bro.
factor in that the demand for alcohol at the time was absolutely insane, and that black market dealers didn't care who lived or died from consuming the product.
Exactly. I just said
It wasn't
that.
until December 1933, 6 years after the Bellevue incident, that the federal government finally toned down their abstinence from alcohol policies. But by then, thousands of Americans had already been poisoned with contaminated alcohol.
That's crazy, bro. Gorillas.
Nowadays, there's really
What
nothing
conspiracy
too
about
shocking
gorillas
about
on
seeing
here?
a gorilla in a zoo or on TV.
What, that 100 men can't beat a gorilla?
But there was once a time when gorillas were considered to be in the same category as the chupacabra, the Jersey Devil, Bigfoot, and the Loch Ness Monster.
That gotta be some like 18, 17, 27 or some bullshit like that.
Find that up until a couple of centuries ago, gorillas were considered cryptids, which are animals that are believed by some to exist.
The fuck is a cryptid? Them niggas was cryptids?
This somewhere in the wild, but whose existence has never been proven.
Right.
With most of these creatures, alleged sightings often turn out to be hoaxes, but obviously in the case of
Is
gorillas,
that a deer?
just rumors.
Is that a moose? Is that a deer or a moose?
Turned out to be true.
Motherfucker was moving.
Western explorers wouldn't come across a gorilla until around the 1500s, when an English explorer named Andrew Battelle was captured by the
I'll beat the shit out of a gorilla.
Portuguese off the coast of West Africa. While he was held captive on the mainland, Battelle described these disturbing, giant, ape-like creatures that would occasionally prowl around his campfire, but because he had never seen a similar creature before, he described them more as monsters than as animals. Battelle's description sent the rest of the world into what we can only call a gorilla frenzy, with all kinds of rumors being spread about these allegedly bloodthirsty, dangerous creatures living in exotic parts of the world. Over the next couple hundred years, the buzz around gorillas grew as explorers in Africa sent back illustrations of gorillas to Europe, which were often given to royalty and emperors as rare gifts. If you were to ask any European...
The fuck is this? Is that supposed to be a human? They get that gorilla jerry curls? What the fuck? They get that nigga S-curl? What the hell is that?
Often given to royalty and emperors as rare gifts. If you were to ask any European back then what a gorilla was, they would have described it in a similar way to how we describe Bigfoot or the chupacabra nowadays. They were thought of more as mythical monsters than regular animals. It wasn't until over 200 years or so later that an American naturalist named Thomas S. Savage found a gorilla skull in 1847 during an expedition to Africa, which was the first piece of real proof for the existence of these animals. Naturally, this triggered a bunch of new expeditions to the area, and between 1855 and 1859, French explorer Paul Duchaillu confirmed the existence of gorillas and even brought some back dead. Just as Andrew Battelle before him, Paul Duchaillu also described gorillas as these savage, bloodthirsty creatures which stuck in the public mind for a long time. Around 15 years later, some German explorers brought back a baby gorilla from Africa to Liverpool, even putting up some towels on the ship so he could swing around and entertain himself on the long journey back. As you can probably imagine, as soon as the ship arrived back in Liverpool, people started flocking around the hotel where the gorilla was allegedly being kept to catch a glimpse of the once mythical creature. To the public's dismay, Pongo the gorilla wasn't the massive, violent
They named that bit Pongo. Pongo the gorilla.
Monster they had thought, but rather a cute little 2-year-old gorilla who loved to play with dogs.
Look at that little shit.
A few years later, in 1902, a German explorer named Robert von Beringe killed 2 mountain gorillas, which were huge in comparison to the baby gorilla that the previous German explorers had brought back.
And
that was really the first time the public was able to understand what a full-size adult gorilla looked like. It's pretty crazy to think that at some point these animals that we now see as normal were once seen as legendary monsters.
Yeah, that is
Interestingly,
crazy.
if you really look at the research, there are a ton of other animals that we now take for granted that were once brushed off as hoaxes, including kangaroos, platypuses.
Nah, I still question kangaroos. Them niggas just aliens or some shit. I don't get them. I don't get how they built. I don't get that.
Giant squids and Komodo dragons. With so many of these myths turning out to be true, it really makes you wonder how many animals are out there that we have no idea even exist.
Them things fierce, buddy. Good little bit. I like that shit or whatever. Good little bit.